One day, more than 20 million Elder Tale players will be sent into the game. That world had become a dystopia. A man named Shiroe will seek to unify the adventurers. A young man wakes up in the middle of the forest, full of vegetation and magic. This place seems somewhat familiar to him. He had seen it before. This place was just like the one in Elder Tale, the online game he always played, but now all this was very real. Not only he had come to this world, the other players were also present. All these people were very confused. Shiroe decides to calm down a bit and analyze the situation. He realizes that he has a menu, where he has all his statistics. While examining this menu, he realizes that he still has his list of friends. Without much delay, he decides to call one of them by telepathy. They decide to meet in a specific place. They have a talk. As their appearances were very different from what they were before, the protagonist explains to him that they are inside the game they always played. Thanks to the new update of the game, they arrived at this place. He asks him that for the time being they should stay together and look for information about this new world. As they already knew each other, Natsugu gladly accepts. Shiroe had no idea who might have information, so they went in search of it, but were interrupted by Akatsuki. She says she is a girl, but she had always played with a male character. After coming to this world, she had become a man, which was very annoying. She asks him to please help her. Shiroe was an experienced player of level 90. He pulls out a potion that was hard to get, which was that it changes your gender. Shiroe had done some missions in the past together with her, although he thought she was a man. After taking the potion, Akatsuki transformed into a beautiful woman, though short in stature. She is very grateful for helping him. She knew very well that this potion was completely difficult to get. That's why she is willing to be his assistant for the favor. Shiroe simply explains that he did it because of the years of friendship they had in the game, plus it would be nice to form a group and not go alone. The place where they had appeared is called Akiba. As they walk through the city, they realize that the other adventurers do not adapt to the changed situation. The group decide to eat something, but they realize that the food had no taste at all, although it looked good. While they complain, Shiroe gets a call. It was a girl named Marie. She was the leader of a guild of adventurers. They quickly go to meet her. Arriving at the place, that woman was very affectionate, giving hugs to the whole group. In addition, the other members were very extravagant. It was time for the meeting. Marie explains that there have been a lot of changes in Akiba, where the other guilds have been getting much stronger, while others make very suspicious recruitments. Shiroe explains that all this has probably happened because of the new expansion of the game. That's why it was necessary to look for more data. Marie explains that this is all the information she has. She asks if he would like her to join their guild. Shiroe remembers his past and simply says no, but would like to be in contact with them. After the meeting, Shiroe had a plan. They need to adjust to this new world. For that they needed to practice in combat, so they go to the forests outside Akiba. An adventurer had died, just like in the game. This man had been resurrected in the cathedral, which meant that adventurers did not die, but this seemed somewhat suspicious to Shiroe. Every day, the group had been getting their skills up to speed by fighting magical beasts. As the days went by, PKs appeared, a term given to players who killed other players, and after killing, these PKs stole everything from them. The protagonist was very concerned about this, as it had become a wild world. Suddenly, a group of people appeared. They threatened to kill them if they did not hand over their things. The protagonist understood that these guys were PK. What these bandits didn't know was that Shiroe and his friends were level 90, defeating them very easily and sending them to the cathedral. Marie wanted to talk to the protagonist. She tells that a girl from her guild was in another city of adventurers. That girl told her that in the place where she is, a guild controlled the city, causing chaos and destruction. Little Serara had beaten that villain, barely able to escape. She was in danger. Marie needed to go rescue her. Since she was a guild leader, she could not leave the others abandoned, so she asks the protagonist to take care of her guild while she goes in search of her subordinate. Shiroe had a better plan. He says he'd better go himself to rescue that girl, since it was the best option. Besides, he wants to explore this new world a little bit. During the trip they will use horses and eagles. The latter was an exclusive mascot. They crossed rivers and dangerous mountains. Shortcuts were dangerous. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Serara is hiding next to an adventurer cat. She is worried because she couldn't get out of this place. She received a call from her guild leader that Shiroe would go to save her. After a week, they arrived in that city. The atmosphere was very heavy. This whole place had become a mess. Shiroe received a mental call to meet Serara. During the meeting, the cat-faced adventurer is with her. This cat knew the protagonist perfectly well. Rather, they used to form a group of the same guild. It was time to leave. They decide to leave the city in full view of everyone. Serara is afraid that this adventurer will find her. Shiroe says that it is forbidden to fight in the city, as it was protected by royal guards. If there was conflict, these guards would kill them. So the fight will probably take place on the outskirts of the city, which the protagonist doesn't mind. As expected, the leader of the guild arrives and orders Serara to be handed over, but the protagonist, with his strategies and the help of his friends, ends up defeating these adventurers. That man knows he will revive and vows revenge before he dies. But all this doesn't matter to the boys, and they head back to Akiba. The NPCs used to be people that players didn't care about, as they were always weak, but with this new update they seem to have a conscience of their own, worrying Shiroe. While returning home, the cat tells them that he discovered something incredible, which was the taste of the food. Shiroe remembered that every time he ate it had no taste, but the dish that the cat gave him was the most delicious thing he tasted since he came to this world. That secret no one knew. The protagonist knows that now they had an advantage in something. The cat explains to them that food has flavor when cooked like in the old days, but if you use food items it won't have any flavor at all, which was something no one had done. While they were eating peacefully, Shiroe begins to worry about some children he met before coming to this world. He did not go to look for them before because he knew that if something happened to them they would revive in the cathedral, hoping that they would be well. While they are back, they realize that the NPCs are not like before. They had feelings. Meanwhile, on the other side, children were being forced to work. They were afraid of dying, being forced to deliver potions. They thought that joining this guild would be the best thing to do, but they ended up being exploited for labor. After a few days, the group had finally arrived in the city of Akiba. Marie's guild welcomed Serara. Obviously they thanked Shiroe. After the party, Marie has a conversation with the protagonist. She explains that while they were away many things happened inside Akiba. The powerful guilds had become more and more powerful. As they had power, they began to take over gambling areas, while those from weak guilds and those without one were being marginalized, bringing a tense and hostile environment. In addition, the most powerful guilds were hunting beasts far above their level, which should be impossible. They were using some experience-boosting potions, which made them more powerful for a few minutes. But there was a problem with that. Those potions were only given to people level 30 and below. A guild had recruited many of these newbies to steal their experience potions and sell them. After hearing about Akiba's reality, he could not believe what this city had become. Before, everyone was very happy inside the city, but everything had changed. Shiroe thought that probably those children he met were locked inside that guild. But what could he do, someone who had no guild? He decided to talk to his former member. He explains that he is afraid to create his own guild, because whenever there was one, the tendency was that it was going to get worse. The cat tells him, guilds are like life, they are created, maintained, and in the end, they disappear. It only depends on each one how long they want the guild they create to last. Shiroe already knew what to do. Later that night, I call Minori, one of the girls who was captured. He asks her not to say anything because he will go to save them, but in the meantime they must hold on for a few days. The protagonist has a strategy, for which he meets with Marie's guild. He tells her that he does not like what Akiba has become, so he asks her to make an alliance. Marie has doubts. Shiroe tells him that he has finally decided to create his own guild. He asks for help. Marie is happy for him, as he is always alone, so she decides to help him. The protagonist says he needs 5 million gold coins, surprising everyone. The Adventurer's Bank is a place where people keep their money. This place was practically the best place to keep money. Shiroe had plans for it. Marie's entire guild was looking for cooking materials, while Marie and her secretary were busy with paperwork. Everything was going as they had planned. The goal was to get 5 million gold coins. The first step was to offer food to the adventurers, all of whom had never tasted food since they arrived at Eldertale, but today they were tasting some delicious hamburgers. Being something new, many adventurers were desperately buying the products. They were curious as to how this food was developed, including high-ranking players. After one day of sales, they had managed to get 42,000 gold coins, but if they follow this sales process, they will get the 5 million in 120 days. It was a long time. Now it was time for the next phase of the plan, for which he decided to buy a house for his guild members, and also asked for help from former comrades. The second phase of the plan had begun, but this time the one who would act would be Marie. She met with the biggest merchants of Akiba. These were adventurers who were in business and were in charge of hundreds of adventurers. Minori and Tuya were twin brothers who enjoyed playing online games. Although they were novices, one day their new reality had changed. They were just children, they were very afraid of this new life. Their brother asked them to go to explore outside the city of Akiba. Everything seemed like happiness at the beginning. They never thought they would meet the PKs, being killed in a brutal way. They revived in the cathedral. They had no money, no guild. They were practically forgotten. One day they were invited to a guild. They unthinkingly entered, but they ended up as slaves. While Marie was negotiating with these traders, she received instructions on how she should behave in front of these traders and not be intimidated. She offers to teach them how to prepare the flavored food, but on one condition: they needed 5 million gold coins. The merchants know that if they are forerunners in this field, their profits will be bigger. So they agree to pay the price and split the costs. Within a few days, the leaders of great adventurers and the most powerful teams in Akiba received an invitation to a meeting. Shiroe called Minori, told her that the plans were ready. Tomorrow all of them will be saved. Now it was time for Shiroe to have his own battle. The day of the meeting has arrived. The most powerful men of Akiba have gathered, including merchants and some representatives of small guilds. Shiroe thanks them for their presence, surprised that they all came at his call. Krusty, an adventurer in charge of over 1,000 players, tells him that he came to this meeting because Shiroe was a man well known for his grand strategies. He wanted to hear what he was up to. The protagonist wastes no time. He tells them that he wants to change the situation in which Akiba finds itself. He explains that before this place was peaceful and joyful, but now everything was very sad. Even slavery began to be created, for which a change was necessary. An elf interrupts the presentation, says that his guild is dedicated to raiding and has nothing to do with the city, and leaves. Shiroe says nothing and simply continues with his explanation. Since the day they arrived, this world had no laws. The quiet life that everyone had was changed. So now Shiroe had come to ask for their help. In this lawless world, it was time to create new laws that would help and protect the adventurers, for which he asks them that it is time to create a roundtable and deliberate the direction of Akiba. One of the heads of the speech guild says that even if such laws existed, there would be no way to punish violators. Shiroe laughs. He says he already has plans for that. He had bought the adventurer bank, surprising all the members. Meanwhile, the children receive the report that they must pass through the adventurer's gate, which sends them straight to the guilds. The advantage of being the owner of the bank was that he could expel anyone from any guild and could never use the adventurer's bank, which was a very strong punishment. The guilds that enslaved the novices were expelled from their guilds and would never be able to use the Akiba bank. This world was ruled by gold coins. Now they were doomed to madness. The other members have no choice but to accept and form a roundtable. After a week, the city of Akiba began to have a radical change. The roundtable had implemented many laws for adventurers, as well as encouraging good policies. The adventurers themselves began to feel much safer. The adventurers' lives are improving with these new laws. But what about the people in the village? People who could not revive? That's a good question. The protagonist knows that he needs to do something to prevent them from getting into a conflict between adventurers and NPCs. But first he decided it was time to celebrate the great triumph they had at the roundtable. Plus everyone is grateful to Shiroe for bringing great changes to Akiba. In addition, the children who were captured ask that they want to join his guild. Shiroe has no reason to refuse, giving them a warm welcome to Log Horizon. Meanwhile, in a distant area, spies watching Akiba met with the king to report on the adventurers. Shiroe had a lot of work to do. The roundtable paperwork and applications are proving to be a very difficult burden to fulfill. During the following days, a group of emissaries arrived in Akiba, sent by the king for a regional meeting. The protagonist has a meeting with Krusty. They ask what they should do. They know very well that they have no information about this world. This was more than obvious. They had to see with their own eyes the new reality, besides looking for new information. In the meantime, another group of the roundtable decided that they would train the rookies, where rookies from different guilds went. After a journey of a few hours, the representatives of the adventurers had arrived. The king had organized a welcome party for these adventurers. This would not be just any party. Here everyone would seek information from each other. A special guest had arrived. That person was the king's granddaughter. The party was very boring for them, something they had never done before. After the party, the group meets and to report the data they found. The group of dukes are afraid that the adventurers will rebel against them, but they do not know how to deal with them. It only remained to wait for new information, which could take days. The king's granddaughter is resting peacefully when she is noticed by Krusty. He had some plans with her. He speaks very confidently with her. Krusty has no qualms in saying that he is using her as a shield so as not to attract the attention of the other dukes. During the following days, he tells her that the adventurers have a lot of freedom and each one is independent, inviting the princess to come to Akiba one day. On the other hand, Shiroe had met a man who was always mentioned in the manuscripts of the game. This was the first time he had seen him. He is Myro Lake. This man goes straight to the point. He wanted to get all the necessary data about the adventurers. Shiroe was no exception. He also wanted information. Shiroe says he will only share information if he says so first. That man begins to explain that there is a magic that no one knows about, which is world magic, something the protagonist had never heard of. World magic was responsible for many players having arrived in this world. In addition to that, they came to a conclusion that adventurers who died and were revived would lose a part of their memories, which was serious, asking himself how much memory people would lose upon revival. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the rookies had encountered a problem. A great multitude of sea goblins had appeared. There were so many of them that it was practically impossible to finish them off. On the other hand, Shiroe was called to an emergency meeting at the round table. The Goblin King had appeared. This was very serious. The Goblin King is leading a horde of 10,000 goblins ready to wipe out normal people, worrying all the guild leaders. They could not just go to defend, they needed to be asked by the king and the dukes. This is no longer like in the past, they needed to be recognized. The goblins destroyed everything in their path, and in a few days, they would reach an important city, but in the end everything was left in the hands of the king and the dukes. While they wait, Shiroe tells them something important about his new discoveries. He explains that the death of the adventurers does have consequences. Every adventurer who resurrects will lose a fraction of his memories, making everyone inside the room very tense. Krusty says he came back to life twice and can confirm that this theory is true, since he couldn't remember the name of a pet. Meanwhile, the rookie team that came out of practice did not know what to do now. They wanted to fight, they were worried, they didn't want any more people to die because of those goblins. The organizers can't turn down that fighting spirit. The dukes and the king had their own meeting. They know very well that they are completely weak, but they don't want to be dominated by these newcomers either. The round table group is tired of waiting, not knowing when they will be called. The princess is listening to the conversation of some dukes. They talk that they have no way to defeat the goblins, they are practically doomed. After a few hours, the representatives of the round table were finally called to meet with the dukes. The atmosphere was tense. These dukes did not want to admit that they need the help of the adventurers. They simply demand that they must defend these lands without asking anything in return. But Shiroe wants to reach a consensus, but the dukes flatly refuse, entering into a conflict that did not seem to end. The princess knew this would not end quickly. It might even come to conflict. She decides to interrupt the meeting. She says she had always been a slacker, someone who didn't need to participate in politics. But now it was different. Many people were dying, but everyone here was wasting their time arguing. She says she heard how these dukes had no strength to stand up to the goblins, telling on the dukes. She had heard that the adventurers are free, so she herself will go to ask them to help with the defense. Having heard this, Shiroe and the group understood perfectly. They had been wasting time in meetings that came to nothing. It was time for battle. They all left for Akiba to convince the adventurers to battle. The city was very lively, something new for the princess. The round table quickly gathered many adventurers. Shiroe explains the situation to the adventurers. About more than 10,000 goblins are invading the people of the town. As adventurers, this does not affect them at all, but the princess wants to ask them for help. The princess plucks up courage. She was afraid at first. Krusty asks her to just speak her mind. She could not fail her compatriots. She needed the help of these adventurers. She says that she is very weak, but she still wants to defend the lives of the townspeople, asking with all her heart to help defend the kingdom from the evil goblins. After hearing this request, the adventurers felt very excited. This was the first expedition mission they had. Obviously, all these adventurers accepted the princess's request. Organizing for battle, this was getting exciting for the adventurers, something they had not been able to do since coming to this world. The battle had begun. The strategy was simple. They would not attack directly but in a controlled manner. Shiroe received a call from one of his guild members, asking for help. The protagonist immediately went in search of her. After a few hours he had arrived at the place. He met Minori and the group of rookies. He could see how one of these guys was dead. Minori reports that Rudius had joined as a rookie for practice. During the fight he had died. They thought he would revive, but he did not. This person was not an adventurer, he was simply an NPC. Shiroe wanted to help Minori, but he didn't know what to do. This was something new to him. He remembered that there was world magic, a spell that could change the rules of this world. There was no choice, he had to turn Rudius into an adventurer to save his life. After a relentless process of magic, Shiroe had succeeded. He had managed to turn this simple villager into an adventurer. From now on Rudius could revive in the cathedral. In the following days, the horde of goblins was diminishing, being practically controlled. Now there were not many problems. The king sent for the representatives of the adventurers once again, but this time there were no more hostilities. The dukes agreed to make a consensus. After observing the battle of the adventurers with the goblins, they understood that they needed to be united. The princess was assigned as an ambassador. From today she will live together with the Akiba adventurers. Shiroe says things improved in Akiba. A big load had been cleared in the city. Today the members of Log Horizon had met. He explains to them that it is time for the next phase of their plan. The other members expect great things from their leader. Now the new reality in which they lived was Elder Tale. No one wanted to come to this world. Everyone was forced to come. There were things they liked and others they didn't. That's why the next step of Log Horizon will be to change the world. End.